Part 28. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, De Chuan-Chi. Chapter 272. Without the cannon, his huge body became a burden. Even if he bent down and stretched out his hand to grab Yejuju, because of his height and size, Yejuju would easily go around behind him, avoid his grab and continue to chop his legs. Even though his speed was not that slow, it could even be said to be fast. But every time, Yejuju could easily dodge it, whether it was his hands or his feet. Watching the video, Yejuju swung his knife tirelessly and did useless work, and a group of military leaders felt absurd. Don't you know that this is a steel guy? Your knife is not a magic weapon that can cut iron like mud. Can it cut through the body of the terrible King Kong Dad? Google searched can. Yejuju didn't know that someone was lamenting that he had courage but was doing useless work. At this time, he was having a great time chopping, and he was the only one who saw that a layer of ice had gradually condensed on the right leg of Terror King Kong Dad, and it was still gradually spreading, and it was about to wrap around the entire right sole of Terror King Kong Dad. At that time, Terror King Kong Dad's right leg failed, and once he fell to the ground. If he continued to freeze all his limbs, wouldn't this huge Terror King Kong Dad be at his mercy? In fact, this was just Yejuju asking for trouble, as he originally had a simpler way to deal with Terror King Kong Dad. But because he had been fighting with the Autobots, he was afraid of accidentally hurting the Autobots and his own mechanical creatures, so he forgot that he could still use the big move Cold Current. Even if Terror King Kong Dad's body was more than 20 meters, it was not more than 50 meters after all. Yejuju could completely use the cold current to completely cover the body of Terror King Kong Dad in the cold current, right? In this way, he only needs to pay attention to dodge the grab and step of Terror King Kong Dad. Can't he easily freeze Terror King Kong Dad with the continuous damage of the cold current? Why does he need to work hard to freeze Terror King Kong Dad with a knife? Fortunately, Yejuju woke up quickly. After seeing that the entire right leg of Terror King Kong Dad was frozen under the thick ice below the ankle, he realized this belatedly. He couldn't help but feel annoyed and cursed himself secretly. I am really a fool. It's right to want to freeze Terror King Kong Dad. But why do you use ice knives to chop so stupidly? Don't I have the ultimate move Cold Current? Fortunately, it's still in time, and the energy consumed is not too much, which is enough for him to use the ultimate move Cold Current. Thinking of this, Yejuju ordered Zufeng to enter the passage to ensure that Vivian can successfully pull out the scepter. He is going to use the ultimate move. After receiving Yejuju's order, Zufeng left the standing circle without hesitation and rushed into the passage. After Zufeng left, Yejuju was too lazy to retract the double swords in his hands, and immediately used the reactor on his chest to perform the big move of Cold Current. Immediately, with Yejuju's body as the center, a large piece of white mist gushed out from his chest and began to spread. In a blink of an eye, it covered a range of 50 meters, and everyone's vision was obscured by the white mist. Even the three-headed dragon closest to Yejuju could only see the fighting figures inside through scanning. At this time, the Horror King Kong Dad could still move, but his right foot was a little inflexible. And Yejuju flew in the air several meters high, circling around the Horror King Kong Dad, and occasionally slashed the Horror King Kong Dad on his body. And the Horror King Kong Dad, who could not hit Yejuju anyway, could only roar helplessly, but had no way to deal with Yejuju. Seeing that Terror King Kong Dad was completely teased by Yejuju, a human, he was furious. His not so bright and rigid head was immediately filled with hatred for the previous beating by Terror King Kong Dad. Anyway, Yejuju couldn't kill Terror King Kong Dad, but with Yejuju attracting hatred, couldn't he just deal with Terror King Kong Dad and take revenge? So, without asking or notifying Yejuju, the three-headed dragon flapped its wings and rushed into the white mist. When Yejuju heard the roar of the three-headed dragon and saw him pounce on Terror King Kong Dad again to entangle with him, Yejuju was not kind enough to remind the three-headed dragon that the effect of the cold current was to freeze all targets within a 50-meter range, regardless of friend or foe, except himself. He even muttered secretly, "I begged you to come here. You came here to die on your own. I didn't force you. Besides, there are no eyes on the battlefield, so accidental injuries are inevitable." Haha. Actually, Yejuju is jealous of the three-headed dragon. Thinking that in the future, Yejuju will also have a mechanical dragon as a thug by his side, he couldn't help but smile insidiously. Of course, with the cover of the cold current and the mask, no one would see his smile. As the battle continued, the freezing effect of the cold current gradually emerged. Even the 25-meter-tall horror King Kong Dad and the three-headed dragon began to condense a layer of ice as thick as 1 centimeter around them. The movements of the two King Kongs were no longer as powerful and fast as before. Except for the roars that were still as loud, they became as slow motion. Yejuju knew that after a while, not only would the two King Kongs' bodies be frozen, but also the parts and pipelines in their bodies would be completely frozen by the cold current and unable to move. At that time, as long as they were separated, they could be killed one by one to get the transformation elements and fire seeds they wanted. In fact, it was true. When the two King Kongs were completely frozen, Yejuju didn't need to do anything. With the sound of clicking and clattering, they all automatically released the combined state. 5 tall and simple King Kongs and 6 King Kongs that didn't look so beautiful fell to the ground, covering the ground within a range of 50 meters. Yejuju landed on the ground happily and attacked the King Kong dolls without hesitation. He cut off their necks one by one, put the bodies into the space, and immediately decomposed, smelted, and extracted them, and stored the transformation elements and fire seeds separately. With the white mist that had not yet dissipated, Yejuju was not afraid that anyone would see what he was doing. Yejuju's movements were very fast, or it could be said that Yejuju was already quite skilled at picking up corpses. When the white mist dissipated, there was no trace of the three-headed dragon and the horror King Kong Daddy on the ground. Only a layer of ice more than 10 centimeters thick was left, showing the extraordinary nature of the white mist. Flying in the air a few meters high with satisfaction, Yejuju looked at the Autobot corpse lying in the distance with a covetous look. In the end, he gave up the idea of collecting the Autobot corpse and turned to fly into the passage. Digression. Thanks, 201712311519371005 for the February ticket, Jij159 for the January ticket, Hooli Beer for the February ticket, Lunatic, sorry, the symbol is really not typed, for the February ticket support. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan-Chi. Chapter 273. In front of the screen, watching Yejuju leaving gracefully and the 50-meter wide ice layer on the ground, all the human beings fell silent. Google search reading. Although they didn't know whether the two huge King Kongs were dead or where their bodies went, they knew that it must be Yejuju's doing. They instinctively feared and coveted the white mist that just came out of Yejuju's body. Yes, the top military officials are so despicable and shameless and have no idea of their depth. Just like General Ross in the Marvel world, knowing that it is impossible to control the Hulk, he still provokes him and even wants to capture him. The military in this world is the same, otherwise their despicable behavior of hunting down Autobots would not appear in the play. The powerful Autobots are like this, so they naturally have no psychological burden to covet Yejuju, a human with special abilities. Of course, if they want to capture or persuade Yejuju to join the military, they have to wait until Yejuju comes down from Cybertron. But it doesn't hinder them, isn't it? Deployment in advance is not possible. Yejuju, who didn't know that he was being thought of, flew into the passage and saw the lively fighting scene in the passage. The Autobots, led by Optimus Prime, entangled Megatron and his men, and Vivian, escorted by Hot Rod, had already rushed under Quintessa. Quintessa, suspended in the air, could only free one hand to deal with Hot Rod because she had to maintain the absorption device. Unfortunately, the energy chain she used to deal with Optimus Prime on Cybertron could not lock Hot Rod. After all, Hot Rod's strength can inherit the strength of Optimus Prime, and it is not something that Quintessa can lock with just an energy chain. What's more, Hot Rod has a life-saving means of fighting the enemy that is comparable to a bug, and a time pause protects himself in the light shield. Vivian has already grabbed the scepter and is trying to pull it out. And his mechanical creatures were fighting with the Decepticons, even Zufeng was helping Optimus Prime fight Megatron. However, this was a good sign. After all, Quintessa couldn't move, it was a good time for him to attack. Yejuju immediately flew up. At this moment, for some unknown reason, the platform that was originally safe and sound after being hit by the vines suddenly broke at this time. The entire passage began to tilt, and huge rocks fell from the top of the head from time to time. Vivian's body also flew upside down due to gravity. If she hadn't held the scepter tightly, she might have flown to who knows where. Cade hugged the pillar and kept shouting at Vivian, asking Vivian to be careful. The Autobots and Decepticons were not affected and continued to fight each other. As for his mechanical creatures, except for Red and Blue, 2 werewolves, and 10 liquid metal robots that could fly, the rest of the wolf pack was unstable and rolled on the ground. Seeing this, Yejuju couldn't help but get anxious, thinking. These are mechanical creatures that he made with great difficulty, and they have accompanied him for several worlds. Naturally, he will not let them roll out of the passage and fall to the ground and become a pile of scrap metal. Without cleaning up Quintessa first, Yejuju hurriedly ran around in the passage at full speed, collecting the unbalanced wolves one by one into the space. Even Red and Blue, 2 werewolves, and liquid metal robots were all collected into the space. Because he knew it in his heart, after all, the 3-headed dragon and the horror King Kong father were gone, and he had a history of picking up corpses. When Optimus Prime reacted, he would definitely ask him for an explanation. He couldn't give them the body of Night King Kong that had turned into an element and a fire seed, and it was not easy to kill all the Autobots. It would be better to leave here and return to the Marvel world after getting rid of Quintessa, so as not to give Optimus Prime a chance to cause trouble. He did not expect that because of his decision, he would be exempted from the possibility of going to war with the military. After Yejuju finally put away Zufeng, Yejuju had time to look at the one who was still suspended in the air, and seemed to be unaffected by the channel tilt and was still controlling the absorption device to continue absorbing the Earth's energy. Hot Rod and Quintessa could not do anything to him, but Hot Rod could not think of breaking through to Quintessa. Vivian was still screaming loudly, his body hanging in the air and holding the scepter tightly, but unfortunately he had no ability to pull the scepter out of the device. Yejuju flew forward, and without hesitation, he raised his chest, and a Bolthic electromagnetic pulse beam was ejected from the reactor. The dazzling white beam shot towards Quintessa in the air very quickly, and was blocked by the angry Quintessa, who used the hand to deal with Hot Rod to form an energy net in front of her body. Only then did Quintessa have time to look at Yejuju, who was anxious to attack. Seeing Yejuju in a cool battle armor, Quintessa's iron cheeks couldn't help twitching. She was obviously afraid of Yejuju. Because, judging from the way Yejuju attacked him, the power of the electromagnetic pulse beam was enough to threaten her. The next moment, Quintessa roared angrily. "Megatron, kill this human for me." Unfortunately, Megatron was entangled by Optimus Prime at this time, and he couldn't listen to Quintessa's call and come to help her kill Yejuju. Yejuju didn't waste any words. While continuing to output electromagnetic pulse beams, he freed his hands and shot ice arrows and ice cones in his left and right hands one after another at the energy net in front of Quintessa. Hot Rod took this opportunity to fall to the ground and wanted to help Vivian pull out the scepter inserted in the device. And Quintessa's energy net, which could originally block Yejuju's electromagnetic pulse beams, could not block the continuous attacks of ice arrows and ice cones. After holding on for 5 seconds, the energy net collapsed with a hiss. Then, Quintassia was hit in the chest by the electromagnetic pulse and the subsequent ice arrow and ice cone with a long and unwilling scream of "ah!" The body was immediately hit by the energy and flew backwards, out of the range of the absorption device, and the energy lightning flashing in the air disappeared. The scepter also loosened as a result, and was pulled out by Vivian, who had just stabilized his body with the help of Hot Rod. Then, in the huge stone formation on the ground, the energy light also dissipated, and the Earth's energy was no longer extracted. In the ground monitoring station, everyone cheered when they saw that the energy displayed by the monitor was no longer being extracted. In the air, the huge Cybertron began to collapse, countless vines began to break and collide with each other, and the ruins of buildings on Cybertron fell from the sky from time to time. In the passage, Yejiju was about to continue chasing Quintassia's flying body. But he heard Quintassia roar angrily. "Human, you ruined my plan, I will not let you go, I will come back here again." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan. Chapter 274. Hot recommendation. After saying that, Quintessa's body suddenly shrank into a ball of light, and then disappeared. Bar Book 69 New. Then, just as Yejiju guessed, the Decepticons who were still fighting the Autobots also shrank into a ball of light one after another and disappeared. Even Megatron, who was kicked out of the passage by Optimus Prime in the play and whose life or death was unknown, finally disappeared in front of Optimus Prime. Google search Furtkin. Just then, Yejiju heard the system prompt. Congratulations to the host for completing the world mission. Defeat the Decepticons, take back the scepter, and destroy the conspiracy of Quintessa, and you will be rewarded with 30,000 experience points and a special reward. Special rewards are: you can use the special transformation elements and fire of the combined King Kong to give the same type of mechanical creatures the ability to combine. Tip: the host's level is upgraded, and the current level is 27. Strength and physical strength are increased by 5 each. Intelligence, spirit, and agility are increased by 1 each, and have been automatically assigned to the attribute panel. Please check the details for yourself. The host has completed all the tasks in this world, and is rewarded with special permissions once. Tip: the host can use special permissions to collect a transformer in this world as his own mechanical pet with the help of the system. Tip: the host can return to the Marvel world at any time. May I ask if the host uses special permissions to collect a transformer as the host's pet? What else is there to hesitate about? What are you waiting for such a good thing? Yejiju immediately answered the system in his mind and used his special permissions immediately. System. Special permissions are being used. Please lock in your mind and select the transformer pet image and name you want to collect. The countdown starts in 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3. When the countdown started, Yejiju locked in his favorite transformer in his mind. It was not the most popular Bumblebee, nor the leader of the Autobots, Optimus Prime, but the leader of the mechanical dinosaurs, Cable, who transformed into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Why not choose Cable instead of Bumblebee? It's very simple. If Yejiju wants to drive a sports car, he can borrow one from Tony when he returns to Marvel. Even if he wants to buy one himself, there is 50 million Me gold from Kingpin in the space. Besides, he already has a mount, Chasing Wind, so he might as well leave them in the Transformers world. But mechanical dinosaurs are different. They are rare, and they are the land overlord Tyrannosaurus Rex in the Cretaceous period, which just fills the gap of Yejiju's lack of a mechanical pet. Besides, riding on a Tyrannosaurus Rex is also a very cool thing, right? So, when Yejuju locked onto the image of steel cable in his mind at the countdown to 7, the system said, "Host, are you sure to use the special privilege once to select the mechanical dinosaur, steel cable, as the host's mechanical pet?" "Yes." Yejuju confirmed without hesitation. System: "The special privilege reward has been locked and cannot be changed. Congratulations to the host for getting a new mechanical pet, steel cable. Reminder, steel cable has been transferred to the host's pet space and is undergoing memory clearing. Clearing in progress. Clearing completed. Memory implantation in progress. Implantation in progress. Implantation completed. Congratulations to the host for getting a mechanical pet that is completely loyal to him, the mechanical Tyrannosaurus Rex steel cable. Reminder, Cybertron is on the verge of collapse and senses that the host is in danger of life. Will the host return to the Marvel world immediately?" "Return," Yejuju said without hesitation. The next second, Yejuju's body disappeared from the spot. At this time, the Autobots had brought Kate and Vivian back to the ground, and transformed into cars and rushed out from the large cloud of dust raised when Cybertron crashed. The military deployed personnel to surround the Stonehenge within a range of 5 miles, waiting for Yejuju to appear, either inviting or forcing him by force, wanting to capture or recruit Yejuju. Unfortunately, they were destined to be disappointed, because Yejuju had left this world and returned to the Marvel world. After opening his eyes again, Yejuju had returned to his bedroom in Marvel. After putting the armor back into his wrist, Yejuju put his consciousness into the mechanical space to check the harvest of the Transformers world this time. Seeing this, Yejuju couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. It was really a big harvest. The miscellaneous brand transformation element was the size of a basketball, and there were 8 clusters of various fire seeds. What he was looking forward to the most was the transformation elements of the 5-man attack group and 5 clusters of green fire seeds placed separately. There were also 5 groups of transformation elements of the 3-headed dragon and blue fire seeds. And the 6 groups of transformation elements of the horror King Kong Dad and 6 clusters of blue fire seeds. These are 3 combined King Kongs. Before collecting these 3 combined King Kongs, Yejuju had a plan in his mind. For the 5-man attack group, he wanted to buy the corresponding vehicle in the Marvel world. Even if he couldn't find a suitable one in the end, he could just snatch it from the military in the mission world. And for the 3-headed dragon, Yejuju would give it to the liquid metal robot. The reason? It's very simple. Because they are all humanoid robots. The final result will definitely be a 3-headed mechanical dragon, right? You reading? Unfortunately, he ignored the size difference. His liquid metal robot was much smaller than Night Kong. How big would the 3-headed dragon be after the combination? As for the horror Kong Dad, there was nothing to say he would find 6 of them from the wolf pack and give them transformation elements and fire. In this way, Yejuju would have another huge combined Kong. Unfortunately, he still ignored the size difference. After he combined them, he looked at the Wolfpack Kong that was much smaller than the Transformers world, and felt helpless that he was fooled by the system. As for the remaining transformation elements, they were naturally left to his blue clothes, red clothes, and 2 war wolves. After all, they were his closest mechanical pets, so he couldn't favor one over the other. He did it as he thought. Yejuju went downstairs, opened the door and went into the woods behind the house. He found a secret place and couldn't wait to release the red clothes, blue clothes, and werewolves from the pet space. Just when Yejuju was excited to give them transformation elements and fire, the system poured cold water on his head. Because the system actually prompted him. "I'm sorry, host, because red and blue are in robot form, they can't be given transformation elements and fire alone. If the host must give them, you can give them the transformation elements and fire of the 3-headed dragon or Terror King Kong Dad. Only in this way can it meet the setting of the 3-headed dragon Night King Kong or Terror King Kong Dad. Host, do you want to give the transformation elements and fire of the three-headed dragon or Terror King Kong Dad to Red and Blue? Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan Chi. Chapter 275. Popular Recommendations. With such a result, it would be a lie to say that I am not depressed. However, Yejeju figured it out in a blink of an eye. After all, according to the setting of the Transformers world, the only vehicles that can be infected by the fire source and become Transformers are household appliances. So, it makes sense that robots can't transform. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. The reason why the system can also give them the elements and fire of the combined King Kong is the power of the system and does not need to be explained. Thinking of this, Yejeju also had a plan. 3 more liquid metal robots were released from the space, and the red and blue clothes allowed the system to give them the transformation elements and fire of the three-headed dragon. As for the process of giving, there is nothing to talk about. The transformation elements melted into their bodies like water, and then the fire got into their chests. The difference is that the fire in red and blue is drilled into their hearts. The fire of the liquid metal robots got into the reactor on their chests, forming a strange coexistence with the reactor. As for whether there are any special effects, Yejeju doesn't know. He can only verify them one by one after a battle occurs in the future. After the grant was completed, Yejeju obtained the basic information of the three-headed dragon through the system. In fact, the three-headed dragon no longer meets the conditions because of the information informed by the system. The 5 robots merged to form a mechanical dragon that was no longer three-headed but a two-headed dragon dominated by red and blue. The weight reached 5 tons, but the body size shrank to 10 meters. It is indeed a bit too different from the three-headed dragon in Transformers. The ability of the two-headed dragon is that both heads can breathe fire and emit electromagnetic pulse beams to attack targets. Not only that, the wings of the two-headed dragon are also equipped with 2 machine gun barrels, which provide powerful fire support for the two-headed dragon. The long dragon tail, which originally only had the function of winding, now has a sharp tail spine due to the simulation function of liquid metal. What surprised Yejeju the most was that the body of the two-headed dragon could also turn into liquid. In other words, even if the combined two-headed dragon is injured, it can recover quickly in a short period of time. Of course, this kind of damage still depends on the maximum endurance of the two-headed dragon. Once it exceeds, it will still be killed. However, Yejeju was also very satisfied. At least, in the early stage, there is nothing that can threaten the transformed two-headed dragon. As for the one who said Terror King Kong Daddy, it was naturally used by the 2 wolves and the wolf pack. Then, there are the wolf warriors and the 4 restored wolves. He was mentally prepared when the system previously prompted that the transformation element and fire cannot be given to the robot alone. As before, it is not possible to give transformation elements and fire to the wolves alone. The only way is to integrate the 6 elements and fire of the Terror King Kong Daddy into their bodies respectively as mentioned above. Naturally, the fire finally entered the reactor on their chests. After the endowment, Yejeju also received information about the new combined King Kong. After merging, the War Wolf and the 4 wolves will not turn into a Tauran shape like the dread King Kong Daddy. Instead, it maintains the original wolf appearance. Unlike the two-headed dragon, the combined wolf is over 15 meters in size, even larger than the two-headed dragon. The three-headed giant wolf weighs more than 5 tons. Its attack method is to spray energy cannonballs from its mouth, but its power is much greater. It seems to be the power of the energy cannons of 6 mechanical dogs. Other than that, it's just regular bite, claw attack, and Vulpix tail stab attacks. Like the two-headed dragon, the three-headed dog also has the ability to liquefy its body, ensuring that they cannot be easily killed. Just like that, 2 fused King Kongs were born. Looking at the mechanical creatures standing in front of him, Yejuju really wanted to see what their combined appearance and combat effectiveness would be like now. Pity. After looking at the not-so-tall trees around him, Yejuju forced himself to endure it. Even the steel cable that was sleeping quietly in the mechanical space, Yejuju did not immediately summon it to take a look. After all, if you get them out, given their size, won't they destroy the forest? This is not because Yejuju is worried that people will find out that the forest has been destroyed and cause trouble for him, but destroying the ecological environment around his home is something he is unwilling to do. However, what Yejuju didn't know was that not long after, he would be able to personally experience how abnormal the fighting power of the two combined King Kong and Steel Cable was. At least for now, they are still invincible. With a slight regret, Yejuju returned home, took a shower again and lay on the bed, falling asleep soon after. What he didn't know was that the restless Loki was already ready to take action against his brother Thor. And he has obtained Odin's artifact armor the Destroyer, and is preparing to find time to return to the Earth to kill Thor, and also seek revenge on him. The next day, Yejuju took a rare nap, and even Sky, who rarely got up early, couldn't wake him up. It wasn't until 10 o'clock in the morning that Yejuju got up from the bed. Sky was sitting on the sofa in the living room as usual, watching TV. Yejuju couldn't help but have a doubt in his heart. You reading? Why doesn't Sky go out shopping? Why does he stay at home all day? After saying hello to Sky, Yejuju also sat on the sofa and watched TV boredly. This day passed so boringly. Yejuju didn't know what to think, and he didn't rush to find a suitable vehicle for fusion transformation. Another day later, Yejuju received a call from Tony. Haha. Yeah, guess where I am calling you now. The arrogant tone made Yejuju speechless and rolled his eyes. Yejuju said. Where else can it be? With your lazy personality, it won't be in your company, right? After speaking, Yejuju suddenly reacted and thought of Tony's talk about moving the head office to New York some time ago. Since Tony called him so excitedly, he must have moved the company to New York. Thinking of this, without waiting for Tony to keep him in suspense, Yejuju continued to ask with a little excitement. Really? Tony? Have you moved to New York? Haha. That's great. How boring. Yeah, can't you pretend to be not so smart? Haha. Tony, how about I cooperate with you next time? Tony, who was frustrated on the other side, covered his forehead with his hand and shook his head. He decided not to care about Yejuju's insincerity and continued. Yeah, I just moved to New York today, which is also considered a new home. According to your Chinese customs, do you have to hold a housewarming party? So, I want to invite you, Parker and Sky, to my new home for a good meal. How about it? You won't refuse me, right? Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Chuanqi. Chapter 276. Hot recommendation. Of course. Tony. You are one of my best friends and brothers. But, let's talk about it. How do you know Chinese customs? Yejuju replied with great interest. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. Haha. That's it? I have a Chinese friend now? Haha, of course I have to pay more attention to Chinese customs. Okay, no more talking. I will ask my driver and bodyguard, Happy, to pick you up in a while. By the way, don't bring me gifts, and don't be so formal. Just change into clothes that you feel comfortable and at ease with. Okay, no more talking, bye. See you in the evening. After saying that, Tony hung up the phone. Listening to the dead tone on the phone, it would be a lie to say that I am not moved. You can know it just by thinking about it. A playboy like Tony, who is so self-centered and rich, has the time and leisure to pay attention to Chinese customs. What else can he do if he doesn't value his friend? Thinking of this, Yejeju decided to give Tony a gift and a surprise. He. As for what kind of gift and surprise, Yejeju also had a plan in mind, just waiting for Tony's jaw to drop to the ground in shock. After 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Parker returned to Yejeju's home after class. When Parker knew that his idol had also moved to New York to live, he was also happy to jump and cheer. For more than an hour, he kept nagging in Yejeju and Sky's ears. One moment, he said what clothes he should wear to attend Tony's housewarming party so as not to be impolite. The next moment, he said what words he should say after seeing Tony so as not to appear abrupt to congratulate Tony. Although his chatterbox look was a bit silly, it showed Parker's frankness and cuteness. At more than 4 o'clock, Yejeju heard a knock on the door. When he opened the door, he saw the fat Happy standing outside the door with a smile on his face. Speaking of Happy, all Marvel viewers have a deep impression of him. It is not an exaggeration to say that he has a good impression of him. He is actually not powerful at all, and he does not have extraordinary reach or extraordinary ability. But he is absolutely loyal to Tony and has deep feelings for Tony. It is also appropriate to say that he is one of Tony's few friends. It can be said that Happy is not only Tony's opportunity and bodyguard, but also Tony's sparring partner, and an indispensable partner in Tony's heart. Happy also has a good impression of Yejeju, not only because Yejeju rescued Tony from the hands of KB elements. It is also because of the intimacy between Yejeju and Tony that Tony is no longer so bored and even forgets to go out to find beautiful women. After a polite smile, Happy said to Yejeju, "Hello Mr. Ye, I am sent by Mr. Tony to pick you up. If you are all ready, you can set off with me." Hearing this, Yejeju smiled and nodded to Happy and said, "Okay, Happy. Thank you for your help." After that, he turned back and shouted to the living room, "Parker, Sky. Tony has someone to pick us up, we can set off." Parker and Sky responded from the living room, followed by hurried footsteps. The three of them left the room with Happy, got on the RV that Happy drove, and came to the Stark Industrial Building purchased by Tony in the center of New York City. It must be said that Tony's mind is different from others. The current headquarters of the Stark Group is in this entire building, and Tony uses the 2 floors on the top as his residence. Of course, the reason why Tony used 2 floors as his residence was that he was going to use one of the floors as a guest room for entertaining friends, so that he could entertain Yejeju, Parker and Sky at any time. Under the guidance of Happy, Yejeju and the other 2 took Tony's exclusive elevator to the top floor. As soon as the elevator door opened, Yejeju saw Tony, Rod, and Pepper Potts standing together with a smile to greet the 3 of them. He came forward to hug Tony and pat each other's backs, shook hands with Rod Potts, and introduced Parker and Sky to them. Tony led everyone into the huge and spacious living room. Looking at the living room in front of him, Yejeju had only one feeling. Luxury, it's different. Not to mention the sofas and coffee tables that were placed in the living room and looked inconspicuous but were so expensive that people smacked their lips. Even a bar next to the living room attracted Yejeju's attention. At a glance, you can tell that the wines in it are not only famous foreign wines, red wines, and beers from all over the world. Even some famous Chinese liquors such as Maotai and Wulianjai are available here. Noticing Yejeju's gaze, Tony said with some pride, "How is it?" "Yeah, my home is pretty good, right?" Hearing this, Yejeju didn't want to say anything, but just gave Tony a thumbs up. Afterwards, Tony, who was laughing proudly, led everyone straight to the restaurant. After everyone sat down in turn, Tony raised his hands and clapped them, and said to Yejeju, "Yeah, since this is a housewarming party held according to Chinese customs, I will naturally treat you to some Chinese food." While speaking, several Chinese men in white chef uniforms and tall chef hats came over with 3 carts full of plates. Yejeju just took a quick glance and saw the more famous dishes in China. There are things like squirrel mandarin fish, braised lion head, dongpo pork, and even home-cooked dishes such as kung pao chicken, twice-cooked pork, and mapo tofu. There were even more others, so many that Yejeju couldn't even see them. However, this shows that Tony attaches great importance to the meal. At least it is difficult to see Western dishes appearing in the dishes. You read a book. After placing these exquisite-looking dishes on the table one by one of the three chefs bowed and said to Tony, "Please use it slowly." After saying that, the three of them turned around and left the restaurant. Seeing the table filled with familiar dishes, Yejeju was deeply moved. Before Yejeju could say anything, Tony picked up a bottle of wine from under the table. When Yejeju saw it, he couldn't help but open his mouth. Nothing else, because what Tony brought out turned out to be famous Chinese liquor, mutai. Seeing Tony opening the wine, Yejeju said worriedly, "Tony, are you going a little too far? Can you get used to drinking Chinese liquor? That's necessary. Since I'm here to entertain you, I naturally want to have a free drink with you." Tony's somewhat awkward Northeast dialect sentence suddenly caused a row of crows to fly over Yejeju's head. He said with a lot of vomit in his heart, "This Northeastern man is really harmful." Unexpectedly, the first thing Tony learned to speak was a representative dialect. But why do I feel so inexplicably friendly? After Tony poured a full glass of white wine for himself, Yejeju and Rhodes, Yejeju was speechless. "I have never seen anyone use a wine glass to hold a glass of wine. That doesn't match either. Forget it, don't worry about this little detail." After Tony greeted the rest of Parker, Sky, and Potts to pour champagne, Tony raised his glass and said, "Thank you to my best friend, brother, and assistant for coming to my party. Let's raise a glass together and wish us a happy dinner tonight." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan Chi. Chapter 277. After saying that, without waiting for Yejeju to stop him, he picked up the wine glass and took a big sip. The result was beyond Yejeju's expectation. The expected scene of Tony choking on the spiciness of the liquor did not appear. Tony looked arrogant, but he looked like he had drunk less than a penny of wine, and he smelled of alcohol in a very Chinese way. Then he and Yejeju blinked mischievously, seeming to say, "Have you been deceived by me? In fact, I know how to drink liquor, haha." Rolling his eyes, Yejeju picked up the wine glass and took a sip, and the atmosphere became lively. Tony, Yejeju and Rhodes, who were sitting next to him, toasted each other and talked about happy topics. Sky and Parker were not left out in the cold, and were greeted by the generous and considerate Potts. A rich Chinese dinner took more than an hour to finish. Whether it is Yejeju, who has long been accustomed to eating Chinese delicacies, or Sky and Parker, who have been fed a lot of Chinese delicacies by Yejeju, or Tony, Rod, and Potts, who rarely eat Chinese food, are all very satisfied. After the meal, everyone returned to the living room. In order to take care of Yejeju, Tony personally made a cup of green tea for Yejeju. The rest of the people were just casual. Those who drank juice, and those who drank coffee. After all this happened, Yejeju was deeply moved. He regarded Tony as his good brother more and more, and he even couldn't wait to show Tony his surprises and gifts. It was just because of the presence of Rhodes, a member of the military, that Yejeju endured it. Mainly because he didn't want the military to notice him prematurely. But in fact, the military and Rhodes had long known why the relationship between Yejeju and Tony was so good. It was even known that Tony had given Yejeju a suit of armor. I also guessed that the Hulk and Abomination incident that happened on the streets of New York some time ago was caused by Yejeju and Tony. The reason why they never caused trouble to Yejeju was firstly because of Tony's suspicion, and secondly, it was S.H.I.E.L.D. who came forward to give up their plan. Speaking of which, although Tony liked this made Rhodes feel a little uncomfortable. That's what the saying goes, jealousy. But based on the relationship between him and Tony, Rhodes did not show his dissatisfaction. Maybe it was because of Yejiju's appearance that many things were changed. For example, Tony researched Mark III prematurely and found harmless new elements prematurely, without any poisoning. He did not continue to be decadent and absurd because of this, and he did not give a suit of armor to Rhodes before he was temporarily absent. As a result, an important supporting role in Marvel did not appear. That is to say, after putting on the armor, Rhodes, known as the War Machine, has not yet been able to get his steel armor. However, chatting with Rhodes still made Yejiju very comfortable. At least Rhodes didn't act aggressively towards Yejiju, or even said anything unpleasant to Yejiju. While several people were chatting enthusiastically, Jarvis said, "Sir, there may be some news that interests you. Do you want to pay attention to it?" Hearing this, everyone in the living room fell silent and looked at Tony. Tony, who was interrupted, showed no displeasure on his face. He only thought for a moment and said, "Okay, Jarvis, turn on the TV for me. I want to see what kind of news interests me." As soon as the sound fell, the TV was turned on, and the scene that appeared directly in front of everyone was a press conference. Amidst the cheerful music, a short man wearing a suit and dancing steps walked to the center of the stage. This person is none other than the boss of Hanmo Industry, Justin Hanmo. When he saw the man's appearance, Tony couldn't help but curl his lips. He couldn't hide the look of disgust in his eyes, and whispered in a low voice, "What kind of plane is this damn Han-mo doing again? It's making such a big noise." Seeing this familiar scene, Yejiju couldn't help but feel a thump in his heart, and a bad premonition arose from the bottom of his heart. Vaguely, it seemed to occur to me that I had missed something. Sure enough, Han-mo, standing in the middle of the 5 platforms, proudly said into the headset beside his mouth, "Hey. That's right. Thank you all for coming." There was applause from the audience, and Han-mo continued, "Gentlemen and ladies, for too long, we have been fighting on the front lines with our brave soldiers. No matter how brave and skillful they are in fighting, there will inevitably be casualties. Later, Iron Man appeared. We thought there would be no more casualties in the future. But he is unwilling to disclose this technology. This is not fair and wrong. And, what a pity. Oh my God." But he still made newspaper headlines and became a hotly talked about topic. However, starting today, our newspaper is in trouble. After finishing speaking, Han-mo glanced at the people in the audience with pride before continuing. "Because they won't have enough ink anymore." Having said this, Hamer put his hands on his hips. After 2 staff members came forward to move the podium, Hamer calmly said to everyone in the audience, "Ladies and gentlemen, you will have the honor to witness the latest technology of Hanmo Industry. They will change the form of war in the future. In the United States, no more soldiers will die because of war. Under." At this point, Hanmo raised his hands and said excitedly, "Let's take a look at the new face of the US military. Steel. Iron. Soldiers. From Hanmo Industries. Please welcome the Army Steel Soldiers." After the voice fell, the passionate music sounded and the stage lights lit up. With Hanmo's passionate introduction, 4 rows of tall and cold-blooded steel warriors slowly rose from under the floor on the stage. Seeing this, Yejiju's mind exploded with a buzz. It's not that he was afraid of these useless iron guys, but that he felt that things were out of his control. Tony obviously didn't participate in the race. How come Ivan still came to Hanmo Industries and made these steel warriors for Hanmo? Isn't Ivan in Hanmo Industries now? Should I get ahead of Ivan and enter Hanmo Industries to kill Ivan to eliminate future troubles? He thought so, but he didn't know that Ivan was not in Hanmo Group at all, but was still detained and brainwashed by Hydra. However, even if Ivan himself is not in Hanmo Industries, the highest command he reserved in the Iron Soldier program will burst out at the scheduled time. At that time, regardless of whether Tony appears at Hanmo's demonstration, these Iron Soldiers will betray Hanmo and take the initiative to find Tony and kill him. This is also destined. Tony is destined to go through this ordeal. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental that Yejuju just left Tony's beach villa and Ivan arrived right after? Fortunately, the reporters did not take pictures of the two fighting, or even expose it in the media. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan-Chi. Chapter 278. Even Tony didn't take this matter seriously and didn't even mention it to Yejuju. Otherwise, if Yejuju knew that Ivan appeared in New York, he wouldn't have killed him directly to avoid so many troubles in the future. Not to mention what Yejuju thought. After the atmosphere in the venue was brought to a climax by Han Mo, amid constant exclamations and warm applause from the audience, Han Mo announced, Hanmo Group will hold an Iron Soldier demonstration at the largest Ralph Wilson Stadium in New York the day after tomorrow. Watching the press conference end, Tony looked very unhappy and asked Jarvis to turn off the TV. Rhodes asked worriedly, Tony, how come the reactors used by these Iron Soldiers are so similar to the reactors you developed? Could it be that the Russian guy who came to trouble you some time ago provided Hanmo with this technology? Speaking of this, Rhodes asked and answered in confusion. That's not right. Wasn't that Russian imprisoned after you defeated him? The devil knows. Tony complained unhappily, but in fact he knew in his heart that Ivan must have been lured into the Hanmo Group by Hanmo. Of course, there is no lack of support from caring people behind this. There is no way, the United States is a place where money matters. As long as they have money and status, there are very few things they can't do. Yejuju also answered at this time. Rather than making useless guesses here, why not go to the demonstration meeting the day after tomorrow and see it in person? Then you'll know, right? The reason why Yejuju said this was that since Han Mo had created the Iron Warrior, this battle was inevitable. That being the case, why not set the battlefield in the stadium? It's better than destroying Tony's new building. After listening to Yejuju's suggestion, Tony's depression suddenly disappeared, and he waved his hand heroically and said, Yes, just listen to Yet. No matter what little tricks they are doing, can we find out if we go and see them? Snort. They are just a few lifeless iron guys, how can they compare to me? To know. I'm Iron Man. Hearing that Tony began to swell again, Rhodes shook his head helplessly, but he was thinking about how to clean up the mess for Tony and Yesel. He knew that it was impossible to persuade Tony, and if Yejuju and Tony went to the venue, there would definitely be a conflict. Once a conflict occurs, there will be a lot of trouble afterwards. If he doesn't help Tony speak up in front of the military, things will be really difficult. Why? In fact, he didn't want to care about Tony's affairs. But no way. Who told him that he was the first friend Tony met and made? Even if you have to pay some price for it, you won't hesitate to do it. Since he had decided to go to the gym the day after tomorrow, Yejuju no longer waited and said directly to Tony. Tony, I have a gift for you, believe me, this gift will definitely surprise you. Walk. Let's find a spacious, empty place with no one around, and I'll show it to you. After finishing speaking, he seemed to have just remembered something and added. The key is to be high enough. Hearing this, Tony immediately forgot about Han Mo, stood up excitedly, grabbed Yejuju and walked to the elevator, leaving the room full of people where they were. He actually had no idea or plan to invite others to take a look. It was Parker, the clever little guy, who stood up and shouted. Yeah, you can't leave me, I have to go and see too. Hearing this, Yejuju, who was being pulled out by Tony, looked back at Parker helplessly and saw the hope and anxiety in Parker's eyes. Yejuju couldn't hold it back in the end and couldn't bear to refuse him. Okay. Come on. Yejuju thought clearly. After all, Parker was a member of the group who was anxious to be appointed, so there was nothing wrong with letting him know some secrets in advance. As long as you conceal the fact that you can travel to other worlds, you don't have to worry about others having other ideas about you. As for that, when they see what he comes up with that is beyond current technology, a few people will speculate and question it. Just let them be. After Yejuju fell, Sky naturally stood up and shouted loudly, not to be outdone. Yeah, you can't treat me differently. I'm one of you, and I want to go too. As he spoke, he trotted behind Parker and ran out of the living room. Rhodes and Potts were left looking at each other with depression and confusion in their eyes, curious. To be honest, they both wanted to go and have a look, but they both knew there is no deep relationship between the two of them and Yejuju, and there is no good reason or excuse for them to follow up. After all, Yejuju said that he wanted to give Tony a gift alone, otherwise why would he ask Tony to find an open place in the mine? The implication is very simple, he just doesn't want outsiders who don't believe him to see it. As for why Parker and Sky can follow, they are the people brought by Yejuju, so their relationship is naturally different. When taking the elevator downstairs, Tony couldn't help but eagerly ask Yejuju beside him. Yeah, I'm so anxious. Can you tell me what the gift is first? You actually need a spacious, open place and a high enough place to see it? Don't worry, this gift is enough to make you jump for joy, but I can't tell you now. It's a surprise. Of course, I can only take it out when I get to the place. Facing Tony's eager eyes, Yejuju said unmoved, and added at the end. It's really a big surprise. Hearing this, the look on Tony's face became more and more anxious. He knew that Yejuju was a very mysterious guy. Not to mention his strong strength, he could get things from time to time that he thought were impossible to achieve just by thinking about it. When I first met Yejuju, he was just an ordinary person who had a few mechanical creatures and could make some machines like me. At most, the technology of mechanical manufacturing was better, and the mechanical creatures he made were more powerful. But through the continuous contact during this period, Tony sensitively discovered Yejuju would always take out some products that far exceeded the level of modern technology after a period of time. For example, liquid metal, and those advanced robots that can be regarded as real people. Logically speaking, such things only appear in movies. Such advanced anthropomorphic robots cannot be manufactured in reality. But Yejuju took it out and used it in actual combat. The most important thing is that Yejuju actually made a battle armor by himself, which is much more advanced than his steel battle armor. The reason why Tony can see it is, of course, that he is an inventor and has a professional eye for physical chemistry and mechanical manufacturing. Digression. Thanks, I am Shuhuang's January ticket, book friend 201712311519371005's January ticket, King Amp, Dragon, the middle symbol is really hard to type, S January ticket support. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan. Chapter 279. Tony knew that even the best friends needed their own privacy, even though he had never asked Yejuju. If Yejuju didn't speak up, he wouldn't ask. He also believed that once the time came, Yejuju would tell him without reservation. It had to be said that Tony really treated Yejuju as a friend and a brother. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. He really understood and trusted Yejuju. The elevator quickly went down to the underground experimental area that Tony had designed for himself. It looked very spacious here, with an area of tens of thousands of square meters. In addition to the huge load-bearing concrete pillars, there were either large and small metal steel plates of varying thicknesses and materials, or concrete piers and walls everywhere. There were also various types of light and heavy weapons placed on the shelves beside the wall, and even Gatling guns and small artillery. Yejuju could see it without Tony's explanation. These things were specially prepared for testing the power of Tony's armor weapons and the armor's defense. In addition, the height of the experimental area is also 6 meters, enough for Yejuju to show Tony his Mount Zufeng. Yejuju saw these and traveled through several worlds, but he could still remain calm. Sky and Parker were not calm. From the moment they entered the test area, they kept exclaiming wow, oh, and they almost said enviously, "Tony is worthy of being a billionaire, he is so arrogant. Just an experimental area, he made it so exaggerated." Without waiting for Yejuju to speak, Tony opened his hands and said, "How is it? This is a test area designed specifically for you and me. In the future, once we have new weapons and armor, we can test them here, without worrying about being discovered by someone with ulterior motives." Yejuju nodded and praised. "Well, very good." After that, I thought Tony would continue to show off his arrogance, but he suddenly changed the subject and said, "Yeah. What's the surprise? Take it out and show it to me." Seeing Tony looking at him with shining eyes, Yejuju didn't delay and said, "Okay. I'll take it out right away. I hope you won't be surprised." "Scared? By my surprise?" "Oh." After that, Yejuju released his Mount Zufeng from the space. Seeing Yejuju's motorcycle appear in front of him, Tony was immediately disappointed. After all, although Yejuju's mount is cool and the manufacturing technology is very advanced, but even if Yejuju gave this motorcycle to himself as a gift, it still couldn't satisfy Tony's appetite and bring him enough surprises. As for Sky and Parker, they had long known that Yejuju had spatial abilities. Although they were not as disappointed as Tony, they looked at each other with confusion. Yejuju coughed twice and continued, "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to witness the miracle, please don't blink." After that, Yejuju stretched out his hands and shouted to Zufeng, "Transform, Zufeng." After the voice fell, in front of several people, the originally quiet motorcycle suddenly moved by itself. With a very exciting buzz, click, click sound, it turned into a 3-meter-tall robot. Seeing Zufeng standing up completely from the ground, he clasped his fists and said to Yejuju, "Hello my master, Zufeng reports to you." "Ah! Ah! Ah!" Screams and exclamations came from Sky and Parker, while Tony looked up at Zufeng in front of him with a dull face, his mouth wide open. Then, Sky and Parker had passed Yejuju and Tony, rushed forward and reached out to touch Zufeng's steel body. Parker murmured excitedly, "Transformers! I finally saw a live one in reality. Ah! I am so happy. Your name is Zufeng, right? What a cool name. Can I be your friend?" Listening to Parker's nagging, Tony also woke up from his shock and looked at Yejuju seriously and said, "Is he from Cybertron?" Puff. Yejuju almost burst out laughing. He was amused by Tony's imagination. He coughed a few times and said, "Don't worry, there is no Cybertron in this world, and no Transformers will invade the Earth. You think too much, Tony. This is just a robot with the ability to transform. And the surprise I want to give you is that I have also made a set of materials that can transform cars. I will give you the set of materials so that you can also have your own transforming robot. How about it, Tony? Is this a big surprise?" "Haha." Hearing this, Tony's face flushed for a while, then turned pale, and flushed again, but he asked solemnly, "Tell me honestly, where did you get the materials you gave me? Will there be any trouble?" Seeing that Tony was not so happy about the things he gave, but revealed his greedy nature, but was worried about whether he would get into trouble first, Yejuju was very satisfied with Tony's attitude towards him, stretched out his hand and patted Tony on the arm and said, "Don't worry. There won't be any trouble, just use it with confidence." After speaking, Yejuju added, "By the way, which of your mounts do you want to turn into a robot? Is it your favorite gold-red classic car?" Obviously, Yejuju also knew from Tony's attitude that Tony had doubts about him. After all, although there are no real Transformers in this world, there are comics and animations about Transformers. People like Tony have heard of them even if they have never read them. It's not surprising to know a thing or two about the origins of Transformers and their state of transformation. And Yejuju can come up with a Transformer and has a way to own one himself, which is not enough to explain. Does Yejuju have an amazing secret? But so what? Yejuju now has the ability to protect himself. What does it matter if he exposes something or is speculated on? No. Tony shook his head and said firmly, "My favorite is the Audi R8, that silver gray sports car. I want to turn it into my partner and warrior." After saying that, Tony could no longer hide his surprise and hurriedly turned around and walked towards the elevator, saying as he walked, "Yeah, you wait for me here, I will send my R8 down there right now." When the voice fell, Tony had already gotten on the elevator and went to his own private parking lot. Speaking of which, Yejuju wanted to give Tony Transformers elements and fire, but it was to prevent the plot of Avengers 2 caused by Tony. He wanted to try and see if Tony would create an Ultron just to study Loki's scepter after he was no longer tied to the Transformers. To be honest, Yejuju really has no interest in fighting with Ultron, who will get no benefit at all after killing him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan Chi. Chapter 280. Unfortunately, what he didn't know was that for Tony, just an unreplicable transformer would not stop his desire to study the unknown. Bar Book 69 New. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Even if Yejuju brought out more technology and physical objects, when Tony encountered the Mind Stone, he would still create Ultron. Unless he couldn't get the Mind Stone for research. Behind him, Parker and Sky were still stroking Zhufeng in fascination, making Zhufeng look constipated and uncomfortable, but he couldn't show dissatisfaction with his master's friends, let alone drive them away. He could only look at Yejuju for help. Yejuju was also helpless about this, so he had to give a look of just satisfy these two little fans, but in his heart he thought of Parker and Sky, would they be unhappy because he didn't give them Transformers? He thought too much. Although Sky and Parker were fascinated by the cool Wind Chaser, they did not want to get the same gift from Yejuju. The two were not like him and Tony. One had his own unique fighting style and did not need a robot to help him fight. The other was a homegirl and had no fighting consciousness so far. In fact, it was not that Yejuju wanted to treat them differently. It was really that if he gave them to the two, they would not be able to protect them, and there would be endless troubles. After all, Yejuju could not watch the two all the time. Once the two exposed the Transformers in public, they would be waiting for endless forces to deal with them. At that time, it would not be to protect them, but to bring them huge troubles. Isn't there an old saying in China? A man is innocent, but he is guilty of holding a treasure is the truth. But Tony is different. The identity of President Stark is not something that anyone can easily grasp. He is also a master in mechanics. As long as he says that it is the first robot he developed, everything will be fine. The most important thing is that Tony, like Yejuju, is a person who is prone to trouble. With a Transformer by his side, at least his safety will be more guaranteed. You know, although this is a world made up of Marvel movies, it has been completely realized. In the play, Tony was able to survive to the end and sacrificed himself to destroy Thanos. but who knows what kind of moth will appear in the middle. After all, iron armor is not invincible, right? And he himself is not to mention. Even if he is revealed, I believe that ordinary people in this world can't do anything to him. Yejuju still has this confidence. After all, with the armor and 2 combined King Kong, who can do anything to him except powerful bombs and black eggs? Not long after, Tony drove a sports car into the test area from another gate. Driving the sports car not far from Yejuju, after a beautiful tail spin, Tony opened the door and got out of the car. He rushed to Yejuju in 2 steps and said to him impatiently, "Quick, yeah, change the shape of my xiaoao." Seeing Tony's eagerness, Yejuju laughed in his heart, but he didn't delay and walked forward to the front of the sports car. After taking out a deformation element from the space, he said to the system in his mind, "System, I want to give the 2 sports cars in front of me deformation elements." Okay. Then, after the deformation element in his hand touched the car body, it covered the entire car body like a wave of water, and it was completely integrated into the car body in a few blinks. Then, Yejuju quickly took out the fire and pressed it on the car body, and said to the system in his mind, "System, I want to give it fire, and transfer the authority to control it to Tony." Okay. The fire appeared in Yejuju's hand for a moment, and it disappeared before Tony and the other 2 could see it clearly. Then, something magical happened. The sports car that was originally parked on the ground flashed a dazzling light for a few times, and then returned to calm. Before the 3 of them could see clearly, Yejuju turned back and said to Tony, "Tony, you are his master now, and you should issue the order for him to transform yourself." After that, Yejuju made way to the side, revealing the silver-gray sports car behind him. Tony was so excited that his hands were shaking a little. He walked forward while trying to swallow the saliva in his mouth. When he walked 3 meters away from the sports car, he turned back and asked Yejuju, "Yeah, are you serious? I already have a transforming robot. Is it mine?" "Yes." Yejuju tried his best to hold back his laughter and nodded seriously. After getting the confirmation, Tony turned around again, as if he had finally mustered up the courage, and said loudly, "I, Tony Stark, order you, my robot little AO, to transform." After the voice fell, a mature male voice came from the sports car. "Obey your orders, my master." Then there was the same sound as when Zufeng transformed, with a series of woo, clack, snap sounds. A big guy with a body size of nearly 4 meters climbed up from the ground. It must be said that the Audi R8 can only be regarded as a small car. After the transformation, it is actually not much different from the Bumblebee in the play. However, it looks a bit better than Zufeng. After all, the appearance of Zufeng is rough and bold. R8 is petite and good-looking. Looking at the transformed R8, Tony's eyes are full of surprise and love. Finally, he turned back and confirmed again. "Yeah, this belongs to me. You didn't lie to me, did you?" "Yes, he is yours. You can try to connect him to Jarvis. In this way, no matter where you are, you can order him to do anything for you at any time through Jarvis." Hearing Yejuju's reply, Tony unexpectedly gave R8 an order. "Xiao Ao, go fight with Zufeng and see who is more powerful. Remember, don't use heavy hands." "Ah!" 3 exclamations sounded at the same time, and Yejuju was the first to react. He said to Zufeng with a thought, "Satisfy him, don't hold back, as fast as you can." "Okay, my master." Zufeng's calm answer came in his mind. Then, the ground began to shake, and it turned out that Xiao Ao had already rushed towards Zufeng. Zufeng stood casually in place, standing one behind the other like a fighting master, with his fists clenched in a fighting stance. "Wow!" 3 more exclamations came out, but they were made by Sky, Parker, and Tony together. Obviously, The three of them did not expect that a robot could actually pose such a skilled fighting stance like a human. Then, something even more unexpected happened to the three of them. When R8 rushed to Zhufeng used his extremely skilled fighting skills to easily and casually knock R8 to the ground. It can be said that Zhufeng vs R8, Zhufeng killed R8 in seconds. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, De Chuanqi. Chapter 281. Looking at Xiao Ao, who was knocked down in an instant, Tony looked at Yejuju in disbelief. He opened his mouth several times but was unable to speak. Yejuju suppressed a smile and shrugged, saying, "I can't help it. Zhuifeng learned fighting skills from me." After a speechless glance at Yejuju, who looked very humble, but was actually more proud than himself, Tony rolled his eyes and said to Yejuju, "I don't care. In order to improve the strength of Xiao Ao, I decided to let Xiao Ao learn fighting skills from Zhuifeng." Snort. You can't refuse, and you can't let Zhuifeng refuse. As I write this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. After finishing speaking, Tony walked up to the two transformers and said to Zhuifeng, "Okay, Zhuifeng, let's admit defeat and let Xiao Ao get up." Zhuifeng heard this and let go of Xiao Ao. After standing up, he didn't forget to reach out and give Xiao Ao a hand. After Xiao Ao stood up, he lowered his head in shame and said, "I'm sorry, my lord, I..." Tony waved his hand generously and said, "No need to apologize, Xiao Ao, your opponent is Zhuifeng, but his master is Ye, that guy is very good at fighting. However, don't be discouraged. I have already agreed with Ye that you should become Zhuifeng as your teacher and learn how to fight from him." Xiao Ao lowered his head and agreed, then said to Zhuifeng, "My master wants me to be your master. Please teach me how to fight." Zhuifeng frowned in a humane manner, but after receiving the instruction from Yejuju, he reluctantly agreed. Next, the two robots started sparring in the underground testing area. Seeing the two transformers sparring in boredom, Yejuju was not interested in staying here anymore and said to Tony, "Okay, Tony, let them stay here, let's go up first, don't let Rhodes and the others wait too long." "Oh, okay, let's go up first." Tony was obviously absent-minded when he heard this, and then he agreed and led the three people into the elevator. Along the way, Sky and Parker excitedly chatted about the plot of the anime Transformers, completely treating Tony and Yejuju as if they were nothing. The two of them had no interest in participating. It was not until they reached the top again that Sky and Parker stopped chatting. Yejuju looked back in surprise and saw that Parker still looked unfinished. It was obviously Sky who had taken the initiative to stop the conversation and not allow Parker to continue talking. Yejuju was relieved. After all, Sky was not as innocent as Parker. She was a person who had experienced social beatings outside, but her defensiveness did not belong to anyone. Returning to the living room, Rhodes hadn't left yet. As soon as he saw Tony, Rhodes said, "Tony, I have already asked someone to inquire. The military is already interested in cooperating with Hanmo Industry. As soon as the demonstration meeting ends the day after tomorrow, a contract worth hundreds of billions of gold will be signed with Hanmo Industry." Before Rhodes could finish speaking, Tony waved his hand nonchalantly and said, "Whatever, I didn't plan to continue to cooperate with the military. My future development direction is new energy. Han Mo can get this order because of his own ability." But before Rhodes could continue, Yejuju interrupted. "Haha, the military is destined to be greatly disappointed. Can you be sure that those so-called steel warriors are perfect? Is there no danger?" Hearing this, everyone looked at him in confusion. Yejuju didn't continue to explain anything and sat back on the sofa. Seeing this, Tony, who knew Yejuju best, felt enlightened and sat down as well. Sky and Parker followed Yejuju's lead and sat down naturally. Rhodes and Potts are different. Although Potts also cares about Tony's group interests, he strongly agrees with Tony's switch to new energy. Rhodes was different. He most wanted Tony to maintain a good relationship with the military. He wanted to continue to persuade Tony, but he understood Tony's temper and had to take back his words of persuasion after thinking about it. I thought it would be better to wait for Hanmo Industries to put some pressure on Tony. Maybe Tony would figure it out on his own and continue to cooperate with the military to develop new weapons. In this way, everyone avoided the topic of Hanmo Industry and chatted about some interesting things. That night, Tony naturally left Yejuju and 3 people to stay here, and the reason was very simple. Since everyone is going to watch Hanmo's demonstration the day after tomorrow, why not stay here temporarily so that everyone can go together? Yejuju thought about it for a while and agreed without any trouble. What Yejuju didn't know yet was that all the video information that could be found about Yejuju was being played in front of Steve of the Me team. This information was found by Hydra agents hiding in S.H.I.E.L.D. in order to make Steve hate Yejuju. The video was specially processed, and what Steve saw was the scene of Yejuju starting a war in the downtown area regardless of the safety of ordinary people. After they deliberately distorted the facts, in Steve's eyes, Yejuju was a man with some strength, but a cruel person, a cancer-like existence. Of course, Steve didn't fully believe this yet. After all, although he couldn't see clearly Yejuju's appearance behind the mask, he always felt that Yejuju was not as evil as he looked in the video. On the other side, in the mysterious magic temple of Kamartaj in the Himalayas, Ancient One, who was sitting cross-legged in meditation, opened his eyes. In his deep eyes, a look of doubt flashed, and he said to himself, "Has the world process been changed? Should I go and see it with my own eyes and come into contact with this variable that should not appear in this world?" After that, Ancient One closed his eyes again and muttered, "Don't be in a hurry, wait a little longer." The one that Ancient One paid attention to was naturally Yejuju. He was the only variable in the Marvel world, and strictly speaking, he did not belong to the Marvel world, at least his soul did not belong. Yejuju, who did not know that he was being paid attention to by Ancient One, was chatting happily with Tony and others at this time. Even if he knew, it didn't matter. After all, on the first day of coming to the Marvel world, Yejuju had this awareness. Sooner or later, he would deal with Ancient One. He also made plans for how to deal with Ancient One. There were only 4 of them left in the living room. Potts and Rhodes had left long ago. Although Parker stayed at Tony's house, he had to carry his school bag and go to school the next day. Parker left, but he understood why Yejuju left school. On this day, Tony, Yejuju and the other 2 also went to watch Zufeng teach Xiao Ao to fight. Bored, Tony also asked Yejuju for fighting skills, and even Sky joined in. Until Yejuju received the message from Red Queen in his mind. "Sir, you asked me to keep an eye on the town where Thor appeared. Now there is a special situation there." Off topic. Thanks, Dust Knight's January ticket, Yu Shahan's January ticket, Shenzhen Fei Yang's January ticket, Warlock's Han's February ticket support.